In reality, only a select few individuals hold the power of influence. Not a pounce over a luxury item never to be owned, but real influence over police, governments, and even clandestine fraternities. My true story is so controversial that I invite you to comment and even question my integrity. Episode 9. Having a Ball. Tara wanted to introduce me to her best friend, Suzanne, and others that she knew well. We were invited to attend the officers' ball with the British Army. What's going on here? I don't know anything about military. We love the military, respect the military and everything they do. Look at where I'm positioned, look at where I am, look at the people wrapping themselves around me. Next thing, I'll have spokes, if I haven't got them already. Tara never told me about no officers, army, friends, army, the navy, got the army, police. No, stop it, fuck it, stop it. There's nothing in this. My mind working overtime. We went to the event, suitably dressed, and the table layout was named in accordance with the establishment and royalty. Our table was named Queen, and the theme of the night was Cockney rhyme and slang. Now, hang on a minute. The most senior table in position, you had Duke, Prince, except Earl, Queen. We're on Queen. And the theme of the evening at the officers' ball of the British Army is Cockney rhyme and slang. And make of this what you will, but just consider the theme. It was all odd. Let's say it's just odd. I played along, silly boy, back again. Unfortunately, or so I had thought, irrespective of the interest of my attendance, if that's what it was, there appeared to be a competition where each table would be required to confirm and explain the meanings of various Cockney phrases. The winner of the card, each had a card, we all had a card, would receive 2 magnums of champagne. This is going to be a breeze, I thought, and I'm going to have a little bit of assistance from my nan, or I'm going to get on the phone. I phoned me nan, I explained to her. I started reading the card. No, that's not Cockney. That's not Cockney at all. She went on, and I filled the card in completely. And the results were in. Just before the lucky winners were about to be personally presented with the prize, Tara was taken to the dance floor by an old flame and began to reenact what may look to many as dirty dancing. It all started reasonably respectfully and fun, although what man would allow any form of dirty dancing with his fiancée? And more to the point, which self-respecting fiancée would participate? It wasn't only the disrespect, but more the looking back at me to see if I was taking notice that was starting to wind me up. If I wasn't being a complete fool, it appeared that I was purposefully being wound up, as the motives were becoming more provocative and intense, the longer I remained in my seat. Then, and with military precision, 2 officers came to the Queen table, our table, each holding a magnum of champagne. I was the only one at the table at that point, and the comments were directed directly at me. We have heard that this table has a ringer on it, and as such, having forfeited the prize to us 2 lucky chaps who may be donating them to the fabulous dancers over there, pointing to Tara and Patrick Swayze. Ringer slang for someone in a competition under false representation as an identity or ability. Are they trying to get me at it? Is this all set up for me? Big old thing, officer's ball, just for me. Nonsense. With that, I decided to leave. I made my feelings known to Tara, who dismissed them as having fun. It shouldn't have mattered that her new 15 grand, single, diamond solitaire princess cut engagement ring was enough to ward off anyone with selfish interests. But, call me old-fashioned, call me what you like. But Tara should have acted differently, ignoring the advances. We returned home, and as Hendon Road was much of a building site, I asked Tara to find us somewhere else, just to rent short-term whilst I managed this property development. We rented a stunning little mews house at 13A Lennox Gardens Mews, Knightsbridge, SW1. It had everything. Cobbled streets, flower-filled, cut-through street between Wharton Street and Milner Street. It had a little pub, the Australian, on the corner, and, fresh bread at Baker and Spice just on the corner shop. Down the road referred to us, now the locals, as H.A. Rods, or Harrods, to many others. But in amongst all of that, at the end of my little cobbled street in Knightsbridge, was what became my favourite Italian restaurant in not only all of London, but anywhere. It was named Toto's, and it was located directly opposite another iconic Italian restaurant, Scalini, on Walton Street. The owners of our rented property was the Earl of Mexborough, John or Catherine to their friends and tenants. The garage below the mews was retained by the Earl as storage for his paintings, whilst the entrance to the accommodation was straight up a flight of stairs into the living room, which had 2 large marble pillars, traditional sliding sash windows, and, it was the Sloane lifestyle. At the other end of the room was a small kitchen, up another flight of stairs, a living room, bathroom, 2 bedrooms, master bedroom, sliding sash windows, lovely little mews. A little bit tired in decoration, but full of charm and Tara's belongings, as mine were all now in storage. It's funny, our table's turn, isn't it? I continued to work with Custer as Tara decided to form her own limited company. And we're thinking about it now, mirror of my business. I didn't mind at all, did I? I was engaged and some odd things had happened, but I just couldn't put a nail in it. I couldn't fucking pin it down. Double checking everything, though, was a basic part of life after the index offence, and I'd never previously had any or so many dealings with these relations. Police, senior naval officers' family, army officers, peers, journalists, others. Well, look, I thought we're all in London and London's overpopulated, so surely I'll be rubbing shoulders with. But it seemed that everywhere I was, there were these people. There was no one else. There was just these people. It's not like, there was the odd copper and the odd accountant, for example. They were all establishment. After a few months living there, this beautiful place, lovely place, I was walking back from St Luke and Christchurch, which is the church on Sydney Street where Charles Dickens was married, and about to cut through in Cal Street, then Halsey Street, when I noticed a small white van. We used to call them sooty vans. And in it, driving towards me, was Custer's painter, Richie, from Bermondsey, South London. I stopped to talk with him as he wound down his window, and he asked me if I fancied a beer. Now, I jumped in, and to this day, I don't know why, I joined him and drove out of town. He took me to a shithole roughhouse pub in Bermondsey High Street when I was living in Knightsbridge. I should have took him to a nice place in Kensington or anywhere. He went with him in his sooty van down to Bermondsey for a fucking beer. Now, I hadn't seen much of him for a few weeks, and we made the most of catching up. I left in a cab, and I was absolutely fucking smashed when I left. I arrived early evening, 7:30 outside of our mews. Suzanne had arrived, and she was apparently staying the night. She was standing in the open front door, arms folded, and I don't know, was she smirking or was she out? I couldn't quite tell. I was just fucking legless. So much so that when you got my head rested on the back of the door and the window open just enough to give me air, which was making me... Anyway. As we pulled up, I was fighting it for most of the journey. I just leant forward and threw up all over the driver. It was just projectile, it went everywhere. Again, there it is. And I couldn't apologise enough, and paid him and give him another £100 for clearing up. He wanted 25, I gave him 100. I staggered past Suzanne, hitting both walls as I climbed the stairs. Tara wasn't impressed, of course, and embarrassed. Suzanne thought it was amusing and turned on the shower for me. Just throw your clothes there, she said. I've dealt with worse. I'm an army wife. And as I did, without consideration for my nakedness, I dropped my clothes in front of her and then walked past her and into the shower. As I came out, dressed, Suzanne was standing by our bedroom door. She's in there, she said, and pointed her head towards the room. As I entered, Tara was laying on the bed and said, I've got a present for you, and it's in my knicker drawer. It's fucking some game. What's this? So anyway, I played along. I walked over, opened the top drawer of a chest of drawers, looked inside, flickered around. I said, is this a game? I'm not with it. I'm not getting it. You're definitely not with it, she said. Just take another look under my knickers, which is an appropriate place to find your present. I gently lifted her underwear, trying to keep it all in order, and saw a pregnancy test. As my mouth opened, I looked at Tara, who was already crying with joy. Suzanne, drying her eyes, and I looked back in the drawer and carefully lifted out a plastic test, as gently as if it was our baby's embryo was in there. Positive, I said, squinting my eyes, which were also watering as I went over to thank Tara, repeatedly kissing and hugging her, before stopping and lifting her up to the head of the bed. You got to rest, stay there, don't move, stop it, let the eggs travel, just put your knees up. She was fucking laughing, puffing her pillows, placing others under her arms, her legs. Stop it, I'm fine. She said, look, come on, I'm being over pampered here. But she was lapping it up though, really. I heard her laugh behind the door. I went to see Suzanne, who had witnessed the revelation and was now hugging me also. You were both so lucky, congratulations to you both, Mummy and Daddy. I called my family and the new grandparents and great-grandmother, Violet, who was now elated and cried as she delivered the congratulations to us both. Our baby's new uncles, Bert and Paul, also called in and were happy to receive the news. Isn't it amazing how a new life can bring a family together in complete joy? My nan commented on a new great-grandchild and said she'll have the heart and soul of the East End with her, even though she's made in Chelsea. She's West Ham through and through. I continued to bathe Tara and her unborn child in luxury and relaxation. So I booked a holiday in the Maldives for 14 nights, all-inclusive at the Six Senses Resort Soneva Fushi, the national treasure nestled in the Bar Atoll UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. I wanted Tara to rest and allow our little baby to grow whilst both breathing fresh air and eating the finest healthy cuisine. Without any delay, we arrived at Mali Airport in the Maldives and took a private water plane over to the northern atoll. There were only half a dozen of us on the tiny propeller-driven plane, and I could see that the two pilots navigating were sitting pretty much in front of me. This was a great and unique experience. As I looked out of the windows, I could see nothing but sea before the plane turned a sharp left and nosedived towards the sea. I was now looking out of the front windows of the plane and couldn't see any land. Suddenly, I noticed what looked like a matchbox appearing in the distance. As we got closer, the plane levelled up and slowed as we glided effortlessly into the sea and pulled up next to a small jetty floating in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Nothing else around it. Nothing else inside, just this little jetty bobbing around in the middle of the ocean. Crazy. Our baggage was being loaded onto the jetty, and then a small traditional boat arrived, and the locals to the islands welcomed us as they loaded the baggage onto it. We were then handed a small cotton bag with a pull string, and written on the bag was "No news, no shoes." And we were asked to take off our shoes and place them in the bags. The no news element was that the island was without TV or other contacts with the outside world, other than in the library where a single PC with internet connection could be used. We were also handed a cold cocktail and headed for the island in paradise. Much in the same way as noting the jetty, the island was small in the distance as we came closer to the jetty and looking overboard at sea. It was as if we were looking into liquid glass, as we could see the fish, baby shark and sea life, as if it was drinking water. It was amazing. We were greeted by a butler and taken to an open reception point as our bags were unpacked and our beachfront villa. We were then taken to our villa in a golfing buggy and invited inside after passing the outside lounging area and outside dining table. We could see the beach from our villa. It was only 20 or 30 feet away. And then on into the room where the smells of lime and fresh flowers and a small hallway leading to a tailored garden with outside shower and his and her sinks. Stunning place. Then we were handed just one key to the front door, and attached to it was a wooden fish keyring with our villa number on it. We were then shown our means of transport, which was a retro bike, each with dynamo lighting equipment for the dark nights, basically a contraption that bolts to the wheel, and as the tyre goes round, it illuminates a light. We were having an amazing holiday, resting, relaxing, massages, Swedish Thai sports. A doctor made elixirs for us to either relax our mood or elevate it in the form of tea bags filled with herbs. We'd visit the restaurant each morning, and after taking a walk along the seashore and a healthy breakfast, before returning to our villa beachfront, as Tara would read while sunbathing and joining me for a swim before lunch was brought to us in cold boxes or heat containers. It was pure relaxation. We would then dress up in the early evening and return along the beach, walking along the beach to the restaurant from our villa to watch the sunset and have an amazing dinner. And then on each Thursday, we'd all congregate at the jetty and be taken to what can only be described as a sand dune coming out of the ocean. The way I describe it is, imagine in the middle of an ocean, driving on boats for about half an hour or more with nothing, and all of a sudden you arrive at this sand dune. It's tiny. It's just sticking out of the sea. It's a little unnerving because you think, well, if a wave went over that, you'd all be washed away. It's that kind of deal, about a metre high off the top of the sea, and it's pure white sand. As we'd arrive on the small traditional boats, a set of wooden steps we'd drop to the front of the boat. We'd get down and there'd be a chef on the island, barbecue, another making fresh sushi, champagne cocktails. Tara and I found the only tree washed up there that had been sun-baked, and we sat there, had some photos taken. It was a silvery grey in colour. It's fabulous. We then return in a flotilla of boats and have a full al fresco dining experience back on our little island with every form of food imaginable. I say that it was from pizza to lobster and caviar and everything in between. Burgers. It was curry, everything. The evening would usually close with the locals singing their native songs. I thought of surprising Tara and had arranged for us to spend the day on an exclusively private island, even smaller than the one we were on, where just the two of us would be there, the three of us now. I had to tell her the night before she would need to choose her preferred food and beverages, which the wait butler would prepare and then hold in appropriate hot and cold boxes on the jetty for the following morning. The following morning, we sat on the rear of a powerboat with two 500cc Yamaha outboard engines, which, when fully engaged, lifted the whole front of the boat out of the water for 40 minutes, with nothing else to see but sea, until we could see trees, then a beach, then a small private island, palms, wooden sunbeds, a leaf cover above the long dining table. And once the boxes were carried ashore, a mobile phone was given to me with one number in it and the instruction: you can come back any time, just ring the number and we'll be here in approximately an hour or less. If you want to stay for the full day, we'll return at 5 p.m. as the light won't allow us to navigate safely much after that. And that was it. We were completely alone on a desert island in the Maldives. We decided to take a slow walk around the island, which took less than an hour. As we did, we talked about our future, and I asked if she would like to know the sex of our unborn child. As I was interested in knowing, of course, and both felt a little guilty for potentially knowing the sex, I'd already received an insight from the Australian medium, you'll remember. That is, if he was right. I was really interested in knowing what the sex of our child was. The fact that if right, then potentially the rest of what he said could be right was also intriguing. The other thing is that if it were, as the Australian medium said, a female, a baby girl, then that would be very rare, because in our family, girls are rare. We have all boys. Boys, 30. Our girl in our family arrives every 35, 50 years. It's that rare. It's the same. You could talk about anything. Oh no, this time it happens like that. And it's very rare for the medium to tell me that I was having a daughter. I was excited at sons, any child. But it was so rare, it was crazy. Now, it was December 2004, and it may have been Tara's Christmas come early present, as she agreed, but the moments alone really held the meaning of almost being on another planet, as we could sense solitude and remoteness in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. With our immediate return, the boat arrived and staff collected all items that were placed there, including us. The ride back was a little bumpy as the sea was choppy, but at high speed this made for a wet yet thrilling conclusion to the experiences that day. Our stay was perhaps a little longer than necessary, although we couldn't have felt more rested, and whilst I wasn't much of a reader at the time, I found a book, Ways and Means by Henry Cecil, who was born on the 19th of September 1902 and strangely passed on my 6th birthday on the 23rd of May 1976. Now, he wrote many books under the pen names of Henry Cecil and Clifford Maxwell. He was a judge and a writer of fiction about the British legal system. This book opened my eyes, the first chapter particularly, The Disagreeable Man, and something that stayed with me for a long time after. We enjoyed our holiday in paradise and left for home, and as we were about to exit the wooden boat and step onto the almost immediately off the jetty, our bags were returned, our shoes felt intrusive, as we hadn't worn any for 2 weeks. That's all. I'll never forget the experience we had, neither the feeling when we were being handed a simple gift. Irrespective of how expensive that holiday was, you can imagine. It was the simplicity of the gift that, for me, topped it, the cherry. I was handed the little wooden fish keyring. It doesn't sound much, does it? But the fact that we had it with us every day was a very smart, very thoughtful gift indeed, and a key reminder of a luxurious holiday experience. We arrived back in Knightsbridge, unpacked, and then an accident with a boiler leaking on New Year's Eve sent us packing again, this time back to Hendon Road, a building site with only one bedroom in any fit state to stay in. We had to decide what to do with the place, as neither the council nor the neighbours above would allow any structural works to be done. I thought, fuck it, I'm going to have to have a look at this opening we're going to prepare at the back and beam out. So I took some tools and bolstered off some plaster from the walls, which is where the steel beam would have been going. I couldn't believe it, the luck, because in the exact place to where we were proposing to put a steel beam, I found a lintel that was oversized, spanning over 2 metres. So I didn't need to put a steel beam in. We didn't need to move to Knightsbridge. We didn't need to do any of these things. Had I hacked this plaster off earlier, I'd have found what I found that day. The council had no right to put any dangerous structure notice. The neighbours couldn't complain. We could get on with the home and prepare for our child. I spent my own time and money refurbishing what was called marital home. Paul had reached a point in his sentence where he could return into the community, albeit with a member of staff at the hospital. Paul loves any form of hard work, and the real punishment for him was taking him away from his work and his tools. He's an artist. He loves it. He found a new confidence when helping me with the Hendon project when released on temporary parole. Paul, on the other hand, was still in a BCAT prison. The months passed and we had discovered that we were having a little baby girl, a princess, my princess, and we were elated. We celebrated all members of our family, but this little baby princess growing up inside of Tara, so I had every incentive to complete Hendon as quickly and as beautifully as possible. We chose a special pink Farrow ball paint for our little princess's room, and I hung coloured bunting from the original picture rail. I bought a sumptuous carpet, soft, even though our feet perhaps wouldn't touch it for some time. We sealed the room, and all that was left was to place the furniture, design a baby buggy and nursing chair before closing the door, and waiting for my princess to decide at what time she felt like arriving. Fashionably late, I guess, and not appreciated as Tara had consumed as much Gaviscon as she could muster. Heartburn being the point of the day. We all had our reasons, and this was one for a mother and a father, so desperate to see their new baby. I wanted all of our families to be back together again and to welcome our little baby princess, and was still unsure how to go forward. Imagine being a barrister and being asked to build your brother a house, pitch a roof, hang some doors. It's all relevant. Although fitting a door badly or a roof leaking wouldn't affect your brother other than to get wet or apply force when opening and closing a door. What I was contemplating was researching and developing a criminal appeal for my brothers, the effects of which would be heartbreaking, damaging to him and his life. It wasn't so reflective when reversed. There was certainly something seriously wrong with the taking, labelling and checking of the samples in this murder case. There was also the feeling that there was more to be known of. This was the repeated interest in what I knew and what our family knew of the index offence. The absent behaviour of my brother's legal team and refusing to navigate and investigate key evidence, even after taking the statements themselves. I was suspicious, my intuition reeling with corruption and malfeasance, but without the full evidence and potential slander would be on me if unable to be proven. But I fought on, unable to share information on potential grounds of appeal for concern of listening in, and this important information finding its way to our opponents. We rarely mentioned even the suspicious. We had, however, discussed the matters with Michelle covertly and between 5 of us only. The allegations and rumours we heard of was that Michelle had been coerced by Essex police into making a false statement and giving false testimony at trial. In addition, we heard from Bert that Michelle's statement was written by a detective at Essex police and not shown to her, other than to ask her to sign for it. This is all very serious allegations, isn't it? And would have to be in evidence if I was about to talk about it. I needed to understand what I was looking at and asked Bert if he would send me out his DEPs, his case papers. He agreed and bound them up in as an effective way as he had previously with the Wicks, Riggs and Harris statement, so they couldn't be tampered with without us knowing about it. We went on to a prison visit and collected 2 boxes, and I couldn't wait to get them home. I carried the 2 cardboard boxes of approximately 50 centimetres cubed in size into the living room at Hendon Road at the exact time Emmerdale came on. I put the 2 boxes on the floor next to the sofa as if I wanted to take a shower before opening them and seeing what was inside. "What have you got there?" Tara began. "We don't have any room as it is. What are you going to do and open them?" She continued to press. "I've just collected them from Bert on the visit. He sent out key evidence of interest in his appeal." Tara's eyes lit up as I continued. "I'm going to take a shower and take a look inside the boxes after." As I stood up to go into the bathroom, Tara said, "I'll open them for you whilst you're in the shower." And look, you must remember that at this point I had plenty of other things of interest since knowing Tara, and yet Tara's TV schedule was unwavering, putting anything else of interest on the back burner until the point of the closing titles and dum-dum-dum-dum of EastEnders. She would cook, she would look after me, she would do anything. But as soon as Emmerdale began, a cigarette outside, well, not in this case because she was pregnant, she would sit down and go through it with a glass of wine, not in this instance, but you know what I'm saying. Anything other than that schedule is odd, very odd. She did it every day, the same thing. That's her thing. People do it. I couldn't quite work it out. Why was she unable to wait? I was only going to have a shower. Yeah, I put it down to an emotional mum. Hormones all over the place. Got to be. No, it's okay. You watch your programmes, I said, and I'll do it once I'm out. "No, I'd really like to," she said. "No, thank you for the kind offer, but it's okay." I was trying to be a bit kind of robotic, actually, in the way I was talking to my fiancée, mother of my child, because I had probably the worst feeling in my gut, and I didn't want to think about it, nor ponder on the outcome of my suspicions. After a persistent attempt to open the boxes of important evidence in my absence, and whilst her regular TV night was about to begin, not least, it was completely out of character. Got to be hormonal. I had a shower whilst wondering what I was going to find, although I already knew that there was a statement taken by Paul Harris from Michelle Brand, setting out on oath that she was pressured into making a statement by Essex police in a criminal trial. These alleged bullies and creators of false evidence in a murder trial being Essex police. I had washed away the doubts and was ready to open the boxes. I returned and sat with a knife to cut through the layers of tape and signatures from Bert on each box. Tara had no interest in the TV now. She turned down the volume and was intent upon the context of the box. And now you've got to say to yourself, she's heard from me and lived with me and all the rest of it. She must just be interested in finally finding evidence to acquit my brothers and have the whole family together. That's the genuine way. That's what it is, isn't it? That is it. I'm just off my nut. That's what it is. Too much time, legal nonsense going on, paranoia. It's nothing to do with any of that. It's this. How dare I think of shit like that? Yeah. I opened the first box to discover dozens of car magazines and some witness statements. The first in the pile was the post-trial statement of Michelle to defence solicitor Paul Harris. I'm going to read you that statement. I've already made a statement to the police and also solicitors acting on behalf of Bert and Paul. I wish to add a few other points. Firstly, the police put a great deal of pressure on me to cooperate when I made my statement. They said they would arrange for me to be moved out of the area to a nicer flat. They would arrange for my boyfriend, Ricky, to visit me at home when doing clear-ups, as he was in prison. At first, I didn't want to give a statement. They were following me around and constantly approaching me. They wanted me to attend an identification parade and tried to pick me up and take me to the parade. Secondly, when I made the statement, they manipulated and altered what I wanted to say. Firstly, the police, Clive Day, invented the phrase, guarding his prey like an animal. I never said that. If anything, Bert and Paul looked lost afterwards. Secondly, the statement that the officer asked me to sign also stated that I saw Bert and Paul kicking the lifeless body. I never said lifeless body, and I'm sure that Bert didn't kick or hit Gary Edwards in any way outside the pub. The officer did not ask me to read the statement when he had finished taking it. He just asked me to sign it. The first time that I read it was when I had to attend court to give evidence. On the night that the incident occurred, I was standing opposite the pub outside the off-licence. I was with Mitchell Whipps, Leanne Riley, and a couple of others. Claire Diamond and Vicky DeFreitas left the pub to meet me. We were standing and chatting. We heard a lot of banging and crashing from the pub. We looked over and it appeared that there had been a major fight. The double doors swung open at the front of the pub. Bert and Paul were holding Gary Edwards in their arms. They walked out to the middle of the road and dropped him there. A number of other boys followed them out. Craig Wicks, David Sibley, Paul McCleary, and one other who I can't remember. As soon as they dropped him, a light-coloured car went by. It looked like the car went over his head, but I can't be 100% sure. One of the four boys who followed Bert and Paul ran out of the pub, had their hands raised, and it looked like they had a broken bar stool. The four boys then ran off. I have since heard that they ran because of what had occurred in the pub. A van drove past and blocked my view for a second. A sports car drew up, and I remember the driver got out. It may have been a yellow car. He shouted. Bert and Paul ran over to the car. Paul punched the window, and Bert was leaning on the bonnet with his knuckles. The driver drove off scared. I then ran over and grabbed Bert by the jumper and kept saying to him, "What are you doing? What are you doing? Calm down." He had an odd look, like he was on those pills that my boyfriend had taken from Gary. When my boyfriend took them with alcohol, the combination caused him to hit me. He never remembered it the following day. Gary Edwards was lying on his back. I don't think I saw anyone hit him outside, but Paul was always around him and might have hit him. I focused more on Bert. I tried to get eye contact, but it was like he didn't see me. He shrugged me off, and another man came out and stood in between us. Bert punched him once and pushed him against the wall, and the man ran into the pub and Bert followed. I never saw anyone try and give him the kiss of life. I saw Stacey Westphal approach him, Gary Edwards, and she knelt down. His mouth was covered in blood, and I said, "Stacey, get away," which he did. Paul followed Bert into the pub and I shouted, "Paul, what are you doing?" He gave me a weird glance and carried into the pub. I left and went on to Darren's. As I left, I saw Paul leaving the pub. A few weeks ago, I visited Bert in prison. I was with Darren and Bert's dad. We were there 2 hours. There were only 5 to 6 visits going on. Craig Wicks was clearing cups. He was in custody. On the left was a couple. The lady was visiting a man. She had a handbag which was weird because prison rules forbid you taking anything in. In conclusion, I wish to stress the following. A. I never saw outside the pub Bert hit Gary Edwards. I don't know if Bert was run over because the van blocked my view for a second. The same car that hit Gary could have hit Bert. I have not been pressured into making this statement. I've made it of my own free will. C. I believe, on what I saw, that Bert is innocent. I would give evidence at court. Finally, I wish to add that after I gave evidence at Bert's trial, I got the feeling that the police were not pleased with my evidence. In fact, there was a message from them when I got home that I was wanted for non-payment of fines. The statement of Michelle was taken by Paul Harris 4 months after Bert was convicted. The evidence of Michelle on an alleged Essex police corruption was not used on appeal and was only discovered when requesting case papers from Edward Fowle, Bradshaw and Waterson, where Mr. Harris is principal criminal solicitor. Her reference to a woman with a handbag at a prison visit corroborates the statement of Reese, who saw a girl when coming over to myself and my dad. I knew little about the detailed legalities, but understood what I was reading, and insofar as this key prosecution witness is concerned, she had been coerced and threatened into making a statement by the police. The statement was written for her and she only had sight of it when reading it during the trial and giving her evidence. She explains that Bert appeared drugged in the same way her boyfriend was after her boyfriend was given the same pills by the deceased, as was said to have been the case in Bert and Paul's samples, and that of the combination of which, noted by her boyfriend, acted violently towards her and had no recollection of the events the following day. Michelle stated that the deceased had his head run over by a passing car. Wicks also said that Jason was run over by a car, and that witnesses said nothing about it. The car accident never came out in any other evidence nor the trial, and that in her opinion, Bert was innocent. Bert was only convicted for events outside the pub and nothing inside the pub, and you'll recall her saying she saw another man, whilst Paul and Bert are outside, which was Wicks, run out with a bar stool above his head, smashing the deceased. It may be that either the deceased was run over by a passing car, and if so, then Bert and Paul would not have been convicted of murder. If only Bert had been run over by the car, then he would have been unable to have carried out the murder, but we know who did it now anyway. Bert's defence, curated by his legal team, was automatism, where the combination of alcohol and drugs caused his mind to depart from his actions, causing him to act machine-like, an automaton. The evidence of Michelle supports that, when detailing her boyfriend receiving the same drugs by the same deceased and mixing it with alcohol. The same reaction, the same unconscious mind. Had she said that at a trial, that would have put serious doubt into the case. She couldn't, because the police were manipulating her statement and coercing her into making it. I didn't want to look into this case, but you know what? This was a decision. Remember, I'm going to have a child. Money, it was going to be everything. Just spent everything I thought I had on refurbishing the family home. I had enough cars to have my own car lot sitting outside, and yet I knew that my funds would diminish quickly if I didn't work. But in the back of my mind, all I could think about was, who's going to bring this forward? Who's going to look at it? Also knew I had my mum, a formidable researcher. She'd already found things that people couldn't find. Together we could make a great team, but could I fund it? How would I fund it? How would I keep the peace? Where would I research? I read Michelle's statement to Tara. Her reaction, at the time elevated my concerns. Whether that's right or wrong, you're going to hear it coming through. I packed everything back in the box, sealed it up and decided to take on the challenge of uncovering the injustice of my brother's conviction. Tara didn't seem too happy. With no legal knowledge, I began by administrating the legal papers, just by simply putting them in numerical order, trying to put the committal bundles back in order. But these committal bundles were repeated and added to, and the numbers, whilst they may have run in running order, the pages were odd. I had to then put them in statement order. So they were being chopped around one way or another, but this is the only way I could see of looking through it. Then my dad phoned. "Have you seen what our arsehole's done?" "Oh," I replied, taking me out of my zen. "Right, he's only written a book about this case and included the Boyers case in chapter 14, calling it Thrill Killers. He's called the book Catching Monsters, the little cunt, and he's stating it's a book of truth. But with what you told me about Michelle's statement, that completely fucking torpedoes this book of truth. And yet he's got support by Nick Ross of Crime Watch and Lord Stevens, commander of the Met Police, and every fucker. adding weight to his words. David Bright had retired almost immediately after my brother's trial, in about December 1999, and took great personal pleasure in writing a book. He called the book A Book of Truth and included several high-profile and highly believable names supporting his book, giving him good character, sequentially adding the validity and credence to his words. The statement of Michelle Brand undermines Bright's book completely and would, if testified upon, crush Bright's reputation completely. With retirement comes the closure of any issues relating to case or cases that Bright may have managed. This is how the establishment remove blame from someone who's playing up. They retire them off. All of their wrongs are just flitter away, disappear into the ether. Some of them return, like everyone's just forgotten all the shit they've done. Oh, no, he's fucking corrupt. No, it's this. They done wrong here. He slept with it. Forget all that. He retired. He's back. That's how the establishment worked. Bright wrote his book and would earn a living off it, parading his book on and off the decks of cruise ships, lapping up his own self-proclaimed profile. I received a copy of Bright's book and noted something of interest. Whilst Bright delivers chapters of cases he says are a higher profile, and they are, strangely, he makes no mention of the most high-profile case he worked on, and that being the Rettendam murders, or otherwise known as the Essex Boys murders. Bright worked on that case. You'd have thought if he'd have written a book about high-profile, he'd have put that one in it. Why do you think he didn't put that in his book? ... The Essex Boys case had earned a considerable amount of interest, media exposure and financial remuneration in books, film and otherwise notoriety. To some people that were rarely mentioned in Essex, look, the fact remains for those that know the people involved in the Essex Boys books and films, they're not all they're cracked up to be at all, and I'll say that laughing, bumping themselves up. These people were being run around like gimps when I was about. People chasing them around. There were no commanders of the ICF and all that rubbish, all of it. They're just bumping themselves up because they've got two little bacon sitting behind them trying to protect them. And I've already mentioned them in this book. I'll get to the people who made the films about the Essex Boys later on. I'll tell you exactly what they're about. In this instance, I need to deal with this bit. I'm just a little bit excited it's coming, that's all. So, yes, Bright's intentionally refused to omit the Essex Boys in his Book of Truth, his alleged Book of Truth. Now, I might just drop in here the fact that Sir John Stevens, Lord Stevens, is famous for the Paget Report. Now, according to Wikipedia, the Paget, or Operation Paget, was a British Metropolitan Police inquiry established in 2004 to investigate the conspiracy theories about the death of Diana, Princess of Wales, in a car crash in Paris in 1997. The inquiry's first report with the findings of the criminal investigation was published in 2006. The inquiry was wound up following the conclusion of the British inquest in 2008, in which a jury delivered a verdict of an unlawful killing due to the gross negligence of both the driver of Diana's car and the pursuing paparazzi. Now, whilst looking at this investigation into these people, myself and my mum started a new skills on looking at things, relationships. Now, in 2000, Lord Stevens became a chairman of a registered charity called Convoy 2000, charity number 1086498, company number 4143777. The trustees of that charity were Sir Ian Warwick Blair, QPM, David Bright, MBE, the same, James Dickinson, QPM, Peter Manning, QPM, and John Powell, Secretary Mrs. Trish Lincoln. The registered office of that charity was the Metropolitan Police, DCC, Room G19, Lambeth HQ, Police Headquarters. Well, it would be, wouldn't it? Because you've got the ex-commander of the Met, the then current commander of the Met, Ian Blair, David Bright, commander of Essex Police. Now, Convoy 2000 also had the working titles of Convoy 2002, 2003 and 2004, all of which at the same registered office, same secretary, same chairman and same trustees. I had no idea of what I was about to take on, nor what I was about to find, because the more I looked, the more I found, and the greater the story began. In fact, we found so much that I decided to tell you about it. Listen in to each episode as I engage you in my personal journey of how a boy growing up on a council estate in Essex would eventually own the most exclusive online private members club in the world.